Hey everybody, it's Mr. Weber here. I want to talk to you a little about chipboards. And I do love chips. Chips are my favorite. They're like, I just love chips. Pringles, anything, yeah. But this is a different kind of chipboard. Has to do with positive and negative numbers. So I'm going to use a plus sign to represent positive, and I'll use a negative sign to represent negative. So if I'm doing like the number sentence, like -6 plus 4, I'm going to have -6, so I'm going to have 6 negatives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And because I'm adding, I need to add them to the board. Okay, so I'm going to add 4 positives. And I know they're positive because there's no negative sign there, so I'm going to add 4 positives. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the thing is when it comes to numbers, +1 and -1 together equals 0. Okay, a +1 and a -1 together equals 0. We call that a zero pair. Okay, so together they get you to 0. So when I look over at this number sentence here, I see a 0 pair right here because that +1 and that -1 equals 0, and that equals a 0, and that equals 0, and that equals 0. I have 4 0 pairs that clear out, so what I'm left with is 2 negatives. So that tells me, or my model is showing to me, that on this chipboard, -6 plus 4 equals -2. Let me try a couple more. And it's different until you do a little bit of it. Okay, let's try another one. Let's start with -4. I'm going to start with some negatives again. Okay, I'm going to add some positive to it. I'm going to add +5. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now if you look at the 0 pairs, there's 4 sets of those, and that together equals 0, right? And then I'm left with a +1 right there. So -4 plus 5 equals a +1. So that's how chipboards work. Let me start with a positive this time. Let's start with like a +3, and then we'll add some negatives to it. This parenthesis here is not like an order of operations parenthesis. This is just to organize it. So let's say plus -4. So I have 3 on my chipboard, and I'm adding 4 negatives to it. And I notice that I have 3 0 pairs, and I'm left with 1 negative left over. So 3 plus -4 is -1. Now that's what it looks like when you're adding. Let's look for like when you're subtracting, when you're taking away from the chipboard. So that happens like in this situation. So if I have -4, so that's 4 negatives. And then if I'm subtracting, that means I need to remove. So if I'm subtracting -1, that tells me I have 4 negatives here, and I'm removing 1 from the board. So I'm taking 1 away, and then I'm left with 3 negatives. So -4 minus -1 is -3. That one's a little bit harder to see. Like that takes a little bit to wrap our head around. So I'm going to do another one of those. Let's take a look at those. Let's say I have -2. There's 2 negatives, and I'm going to take away -1. So I have 2 negatives. I'm taking away 1. I'm left with this guy right here, which is a -1. Let's take a look at what happens if I'm taking away more than I have. So let's say I have -3, 1, 2, 3, and I want to take away like 5 negatives. Now I only have 3 negatives here to take away, so what I need to do is I need to incorporate a negative pair. Now notice this right here, this 0 pair actually equals 0, so I can put as many of those as I want on there, but what it does is when I get 0 pairs on there, it's putting enough negatives for me to subtract. So notice what I did. I put 2 0 pairs on there, which means I added nothing and haven't changed the equation, but now I have 5 negatives to take away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm left with 2. So that means, oops, that's telling you and me that -3 minus -5 is +2. And the chipboard just keeps showing us that, all right? So keep trusting the chipboard. So a plus means you're adding to the chipboard and you're looking for 0 pairs. Minus means you're taking away from the chipboard, but sometimes you need to have 0 pairs in there to help you, so you have enough to take away. I think I want to do one more of those subtraction where you have to include them. So let's say I have a -1, and let's say I'm taking away 3 negatives. Okay, I only have 1 negative, so I need 2 more in there, and so I'm going to add 2 0 pairs. Now if you look, I've got 3 negatives to take away, and I'm left with these 2 positives. So -1 minus -3 is +2. It also kind of happens, like, I gotta show you one more, because this is kind of a wonky situation happens. Let's say I have a positive 3, okay? And I'm gonna take away 2 negatives. Look, there's not even any negatives on here. No negatives. But if I do a 0 pair, like I got a couple of them here, now I have 2 negatives to take away. So I take those 2 negatives away, and look what I'm left with. So this model tells me that 3 minus negative 2 is gonna be 5. So the chipboard is supposed to help us kind of navigate these integers and positive and negative numbers. All right, hope that helps.